Welcome to another episode of Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tauchi, and I will be your host for this segment. What do we talk about here? Well, the conversation is about anything that has to do with our community, whether it's events, whether it's issues, campaigns, candidates, to, what are we doing in regards to upcoming events? Today is a very special conversation. We're privileged to have an individual who is looking for your vote when it comes to the state treasurer's office. This is a big year when it comes to state races. I mean, there's even more if we want to get into the federal level and the U.S. Senate race, but we're not talking about that today. But we have joining us Elizabeth Dionne, and she is a candidate for state treasurer, and she's a Republican candidate. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Kevin. So pleased to be here.
For folks who may or may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I think the most important thing about me is that I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 4 children who are grown and can't afford to live and raise their families in this state, which sadly is true of too many of our adult children right now. I'm also an attorney. I have spent time both as a corporate attorney and a special education law attorney. For purposes of the Treasurer's Office, for the last 10 years, I've been an elected local official in Belmont, Massachusetts, where for 10 years, as a member of town meeting, as a member of the Finance Committee, and now as a member of the Select Board, I've dealt with town budgets year in, year out. So I know the constraints and the challenges that our cities and towns face right now. I am not a professional politician. Politics at the local level is a labor of love. Most cities and towns aren't paying their officials, or they're paying them very nominal amounts. So I do this because I deeply care about my community. And as I look at the challenges the state faces right now, we are at an inflection point. We're at a crossroads. The Massachusetts miracle is over. We're once again known as Taxachusetts. And either we grab the bull by the horns and change our direction right now, or I really worry about the future of this state. I worry about our children's ability to stay here. I worry about their futures.
Let's talk. You're running here for state treasurer at a time when many residents are feeling the economic pressure. What specifically motivated you to enter this particular race?
Again, it was my children. Talking to them, they're either undergraduate or pursuing graduate studies, and saying none of their friends plan to stay in the state. They all plan to leave. Data just came out this week that we rank 46 out of 50 in terms of losing our young, educated population. So we are losing our middle class, we're losing our upper class, we're losing our educated young people, and we're replacing them with people who don't earn as much, cannot support the state's $65 billion budget. Those revenues have to come from somewhere. They come from productive taxpayers, and we're losing them at every level.
How would you say your professional background prepared you to oversee the Commonwealth's finances and investments?
The Treasurer's Office is unusual. It's unusually powerful, and we do oversee investments and the state's cash flow, but we also oversee the lottery, which is the largest source of unrestricted local government aid, oversee the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, don't oversee the Cannabis Control Commission, but have significant input there. So one example, so I have a legal background, not a finance background, but I've spent 10 years on local budgets. So I know how to read spreadsheets. I know how to track. We track down to the nickel and the penny. That's how strapped we are, like every other city and town. I think the most important thing as a treasurer is to understand that in the 12 departments that the treasurer oversees, you can't be deeply involved in any of them. So the most important skill of the treasurer is to recognize talent and hire very capable people for each of those 12 departments. And then, this is really the key thing I've learned as a local leader. You put someone good in place, and then you make the public policy arguments, you provide the protection so they can get their job done. So it starts at the top. And so that means that I would be assessing and hiring the best management professionals that I can for each of those 12 divisions. The second thing that's really important, and I've thought about this a lot because there's been a lot of bad news coming out of the Treasurer's Office lately, whether it's the $1 million that was stolen in November from the Unclaimed Property Division, or the $1 million that Deb Goldberg wasted in her personal vendetta against Shannon O'Brien, or the tens of millions of dollars that we've documented in excess spending, or the lottery losing its place as the top-ranked lottery in the nation. There are a lot of problems. We know, and I refer to this as the Goldberg iceberg. An iceberg, 10% of its mass is above the water, 90% is below the water. We know the 10%, it's not good. I'm really worried about the 90%. How do you figure out what's going on in the 90%? Three things that I would do. The first is, day one, I'd invite the auditor in and invite her to audit each of those 12 departments so that we know what our baseline is, we know what we're dealing with. As necessary, I'd invite the state inspector general in because he's done a fabulous job since he's been appointed. Then the final thing that I would do, and this is create a culture of openness where anyone can come and talk to me without fear of reprisal, where I would honor their confidentiality, because each employee in each of those 12 departments is your eyes and ears on the ground. They're the ones who are going to tell me if something's wrong or if there's somewhere that I need to look or poke or prod. So again, it's really a question of leadership, not being an investment professional, but understanding what a good investment professional looks like, understanding what the talents are that are required for each of the 12 departments.
Let's talk about residents continue to face rising house costs, student loan debt, and inflation. How can the Treasurer's Office help ease those burdens?
Much more than you would think. The Treasurer's Office in Massachusetts is uniquely powerful. So first of all, just stepping back, I'm calling myself a taxpayer's treasurer. I am running to represent the taxpayers on Beacon Hill because nobody is right now. We are spending money at the state level like drunken sailors, and it's not going back to cities and towns where we are delivering the frontline services, whether that's public safety or education or streets and roads. So for example, of the 12 departments, one of the most important is the lottery. The lottery is the major source, if not the major source, of unrestricted local government assistance. It's actually the fourth most important source of revenue in the Commonwealth as a whole. So expenses at the lottery as a percentage of revenue have risen significantly under Goldberg's tenure. The first thing that I would do is go in and scrub, make sure that we are not wasting money, because every dollar that is wasted in the Treasurer's Office is a dollar that doesn't go back to cities and towns. That's absolutely something that can happen. Another thing that can happen is we have a fairly large unfunded pension liability. Those pensions are sacred. Those are pensions that we promised to public safety, to public servants. So I am not saying that they're the problem. The problem is that we haven't funded it sufficiently. So we need to make sure, I would need as a leader to protect the investment professionals in Prim and Prit, that's the state investment arm for pensions, from, frankly, for want of a better term, a woke political agenda. Because if you impose a woke political agenda on them, they cannot seek maximum returns. So my goal would be to allow those investment professionals to seek maximum returns within the law, because every dollar that they make in investment returns is one less dollar that I have to ask taxpayers for to fund the $14 billion that we still have not funded.
Let's go back. You talked about the lottery, and I believe that a small provision of the lottery is the Mass School Building Authority, and we know that some of that funding goes towards building new schools. I believe that the state will give a percentage to communities that are able to pass the muster when it comes to putting through a feasibility study, or even if they have schools that are in need of fixing. What do you think needs to happen in regards to the MSBA? Is that something that you would also want to audit,
Absolutely.
take a look at?
I said all 12 departments, and I mean all 12 departments. Yep. So Belmont actually recently built a middle and a high school, a combined school with significant assistance from the MSBA, which we desperately needed, and I am really grateful for that help. But a report came out recently that wealthy communities have been able to tap into MSBA, poor communities have not been able to. So the first thing I want to find out is, why are we not equitably distributing this money? Because children in poor communities, or smaller communities, less affluent communities, and there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, so a lot of those count as less affluent. The largesse from MSBA has not been evenly distributed. So the first thing is to look at how we're distributing, to make sure it's fair, make sure that every community has equal access to MSBA. But the second challenge is, there's sort of this school industrial complex where previously the MSBA really took a tight look at size of projects, really had incentives built in to restrain expenses. Right now those incentives are gone. The MSBA just covers a percentage of it. So what's your incentive to rein in expenses if the state's going to keep kicking in a significant portion? It's anywhere from 25 to 30%, as I recall. And this I have learned from talking to prior officials at the MSBA who've said under their tenure, the MSBA ran a much tighter ship. This matters because every $10 million, $50 million, $100 million that you spend on a school, Lexington just passed a $660 million high school. That's a heck of a lot of money that now is not available to other cities and towns. We have a finite pie of dollars. Dollars spent one place are not available someplace else. At any given point, the treasurer's office is the most important state office that voters know nothing about. But at any given point, the treasurer controls about 20% of state assets. It's incredibly powerful. If I can shift spending on 20% of state assets, I think we can find $1 billion or $2 billion, which isn't a lot in the context of a $65 billion state budget. But boy, if we could return $1 or $2 billion to cities and towns, that's a game changer. The state budget has doubled in the last 12 years. Local aid has decreased by 25% in real dollars. We are asking cities and towns to do more with less, and that's all coming out of people's property taxes. It's coming out of their families' budgets every year.
As you're out there campaigning, you're talking to folks, whether you're speaking to elected leaders like yourself, or just the regular Joe and Jane taxpayer, what are they asking you? Are they asking you just the regular questions as to what a treasurer does, or are there things they have? Or do they have they drilled down and shared any issues with you that they hope that it's something you'd be able to tackle?
To be honest, it's less about asking me questions and more about sharing their stories. I feel like right now it's actually a lot more important for me to listen and to understand what it is that is driving the average taxpayer. What is it that's driving our middle class to leave? What is it that's driving our businesses to leave? What is it that's driving our educated young people to leave? And I can tell you what that is. Right now, we rank just behind Hawaii, and it depends on who you ask. Sometimes we rank ahead of Hawaii. We are the most or second most expensive state in the United States right now. We rank third out of 50 states for our property tax burden. We rank seventh for overall tax burden. These are not the Bill Weld, Mitt Romney, Charlie Baker years. Those are far in our rearview mirror. We have had one party rule. We've had no checks and balances on Beacon Hill. And look how fast we have tumbled out of a position where we were the Massachusetts miracle. I was speaking to a biotech executive today. He said that they can't, actually an investor, companies don't want to start up in Massachusetts anymore. It's too expensive for their employees to live here. Biotech drove our economy for a long time, and it is sputtering. Here's another fact. All these lists that we don't want to be on, the worst of lists or the best of in terms of being the most expensive, we rank second out of every state for per capita state level debt. That is a liability that each one of us is responsible for that people don't even know is there. I didn't know that until last month when I was speaking to some investment professionals. So this is what I mean when I say I need to listen more than people want to tell me what's going on. I need to ask them questions more than them asking me questions, because I need to find out what is our problem, what are our problems, what are the solutions, what do people want? What they want is a state that's where it used to be, where we did have a thriving economy, where we could provide jobs for our young people, where people could afford to live and buy a house here. They could afford to raise their children here. So as I said, I'm running literally to be the taxpayer's treasurer. I'm not running to represent elites. I'm not a career politician. I'm not subject to special interests. I don't have to do this. I'm doing this because I deeply care. Massachusetts has been so good to my husband and me, and we want to pay it back. But one of the ways we'd like to pay it back is to keep our 4 children here.
Let's talk about what principles should guide how Massachusetts invests. You talk about the state pension. How should the state invest in public funds, particularly when it comes to risks, transparency, and ethic considerations?
So I previously said that anything that we do needs to be obviously within the law. And there are rules and regulations that govern PRIT and PRIM. And in fairness to PRIT and PRIM, they are actually well run right now. But that's in spite of Deb Goldberg, not because of her. She was really trying to push an ESG agenda. ESG means environmental, social, and governance goals.
Thank you.
And the folks at PRIT diplomatically resisted that. which is one of the reasons that our pension system has performed well. And as an example of this, so we have the state-run system, but then there's about 100 local systems. And the problem with those local systems is transparency. We don't know what they're doing. So Belmont system, we did a deep dive about 4 or 5 years ago and realized that over the lifetime of PRIT and PRIM, those are the Pension Reserves Investment Management, which manages the Pension Reserve Investment Trust. So I know that I'm using a lot of acronyms, so I'm just trying to explain what those mean. So
no, but that's good. But for the folks who they want to know this.
So
and
PRIM and
what
PRIT,
was that you said again?
Yeah, PRIM and PRIT. Those are just the state-run pension funds. But local governments, not local governments, but local pension systems have the ability to fully vest their assets in PRIM and PRIT. And why this matters is PRIT is so big, it's close to $100 billion, that it gets economies of scale, and it's very sophisticated. What we found was over the course of about 35, 40 years, the Belmont system had $10 million less than if we had invested in the state fund. The state fund, over time, those returns matter. So through a pretty long effort of public pressure and key appointments, we eventually, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, got our local retirement system to fully vest in PRIT. So this is something that I care a lot about. I've spent a lot of years fighting for this. I would like to make that easier for every other city and town. $10 million, that's huge to our budget. Boy, as I said, sometimes I feel like we're shaking couch cushions to find pennies, nickels, and dimes. $10 million, that was just kind of like a stab to all of our hearts of, oh my goodness, that's the amount of money that we wouldn't have to be making up, because every dollar that's a shortfall in your pension system, your taxpayers have to make up. So the same way that taxpayers have to make up the shortfall, the $14 billion shortfall in the state system, each city and town has to make up any shortfall in its own system.
As you were deciding whether you were going to run for this office, what were some of the little known things that you learned about, and you were like, you found yourself more wanting to be a part of this race? Again, you talk about 12 different departments within the treasurer's office. Was there something that you learned and you're like, wow, that's interesting that the treasurer oversees and it's within this landscape? Pretty
much everything that I have said, I learned as I was making this decision. I didn't enter into this lightly, but I thought, it was suggested that I should look at this given my background and my experience. I looked at those 12 departments and thought, oh my goodness, I have had interactions with, I think, every one of them except the Water Management Resource Authority. And even then, we have dealt with a lot of water and drainage issues in Belmont, as does every other city and town. So I learned that the treasurer's office is uniquely powerful. Part of the reason for that is every time there was a Republican governor, the Democratic legislature would take something away from the governor and give it to the treasurer. So Frank Sargent was governor when the lottery was formed. And the lottery wanted, the Democrats wanted to make sure that there was plenty of patronage to go around and that it wasn't under a Republican's control. So they gave it to Bob Crane so that he could continue. And he employed 2 to 3 times as many employees at the lottery as any other state system did. Oh yeah, it was, and he was proud of his patronage. He bragged about it. And he was treated as a lovable rogue. But that's a heck of a lot of money that the taxpayers were having to make up for him to take care of his buddies. So the lottery got given to the treasurer. That typically wouldn't be the treasurer's responsibility, but Frank Sargent couldn't have it. And then when Mitt Romney was governor, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission got taken from him and given to the treasurer. And then when Charlie Baker was governor, the Cannabis Control Commission was formed. It's a complicated structure where the governor has some input, the attorney general has some input, but the treasurer also has input. And again, I think the goal was to keep it out of the Republican governor's hands because patronage. So it's been kind of wild to learn this history. But things like the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, deep experience with that because of our experience of building schools in Belmont. PRIM and PRIT, because I spent all those years trying to nudge our retirement system into investing with them. I am known as a relentless reformer. We have done massive amounts, and I say we, it's a team effort. Government is always a team effort, but it does take a leader who will articulate a vision. And I do think that I have done that in Belmont. I've articulated a vision and I've brought disparate interests together to all work in the same direction for the good of the town. But whether it's PRIM and PRIT, whether it's the MSBA, I looked at each one of these, and as someone, again, known as a relentless reformer, I'm kind of itching to get my hands on it. I'm itching to open up the books. I'm itching to increase transparency. I'm itching to get money back to cities and towns. And again, what really drove me, Belmont, we have done everything we can. We really have. We've restructured departments. We have found efficiencies. I absolutely oppose doing away with Prop 2.5. But that said, I did lead a Prop 2.5 effort saying to Belmontonians, if we don't increase our property taxes, we are going to have to shut a fire department. We're going to, and that succeeded. But we made a series of promises in conjunction with that, which we kept. I think it's very important that voters have this check, but the voters gave us an override. We have trimmed our expenses. We are engaging in upzoning so that we can get more commercial development. And I looked at it, none of it's enough. There's a tsunami coming that is going to bury our cities and towns. The state has got to increase unrestricted local aid. There is no other solution. It's either that or we continue to cut departments. We endanger education, we endanger public safety. People come to Massachusetts and say, this is the most expensive state in the nation and the roads are terrible. $65 million. There's got to be more that can go back to cities and towns. And honestly, having dealt with restructuring, having dealt with financial reform, having dealt with cutting our expenses, having raised our own taxes, having upzoned, and none of it's enough, this is the only solution left for cities and towns, is for the state to provide more relief, and there's got to be a voice on Beacon Hill for the taxpayers, for the cities and towns.
We talked a little bit about education then in the form of the MSBA, but let's talk about the future of the Commonwealth and talk about our kids who go into college. I believe that the Treasurer oversees programs like Mass Save, U Fund. These are college savings plans. What would you want to do? Would you want to expand these? Would you want to restructure these programs to better benefit the residents of Massachusetts?
I actually think the single most important thing that we can do is increase access to vocational education. Right now, college degrees are not paying for themselves.
No.
But guess what can't be shipped overseas? And guess what can't be turned over to AI? The trades. There are six-figure jobs in the trades that are going unfilled because we have not trained enough people. So there's absolutely a place for college. I feel at times in my life I felt like a professional student. I've taught at the college level. That is important. It is not for everybody. Not every child learns that way. There are a lot of kids who learn better through project-based learning. If they can see the relation between chemistry and what they're doing in food services, or the relation between physics and what they might be doing with building computers or building cars, they're going to learn the science because suddenly they know a reason that they should. They're motivated. It's not just this empty exercise. They're not just jumping through hoops. So I really think the single most important thing that we can do is expand access to vocational education. After that, the second thing we need to do, costs of higher education are out of control. I am tired of the federal and state governments writing blank checks to administrative bloat. So by the same token that we need to tighten our belts at the state level, colleges and universities need to tighten their belts. You and I are funding this because we backstop all these loans. When New York University, and this is out of Massachusetts, granted, but was letting students borrow $150,000 for film degrees where they could make maybe $30,000, $35,000 a year, why on earth are we guaranteeing those loans? So one of the major problems that I had with the Biden administration's idea that they were going to forgive debt was the schools had no skin in the game. The schools created that debt. They need to be responsible. They need to be part of the solution. It's not just you and me and Joe taxpayer. As I said, taxpayer's treasurer. Every one of these dollars comes from a family's budget. Every dollar is sacred. Every dollar needs to be scrutinized. So the last thing that I'm going to do is continue this blank check to universities. So I want to provide opportunity, but I think the first thing that we do is rein in expenses. It's not provide more money. The second thing that we do is make sure that we're providing the type of education and experiences that actually result in jobs that will let our children stay here and have a comfortable life like their parents had, like we've had.
Let's talk about if you are successful at the convention, you move on to September, November, you're successful November 2026.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes. Talk about working with the governor, the legislature, and other constitutional officers if you're elected. How important is it to be able to work with others regardless of what party you are each affiliated with?
Incredibly important. To be a Republican in Massachusetts is to learn how to work across the aisle. You can't do it if you're not. And I've actually worked closely with Democrats my whole time in Belmont. And frankly, at the local level, potholes aren't red or blue, they're potholes.
True.
So I have a heck of a lot of experience solving problems at the local level, working with everybody. There are lots of Democrats of goodwill. And we hope to have Democrats for Dionne after I've nailed down the Republicans, because they are there. Yet we had a long, proud history of Democrats in Massachusetts who were fiscally responsible. Think about Tom Finneran or Tom Birmingham. Think about Shannon O'Brien, who has been completely roasted by the current treasurer, but she was a good treasurer. She was actually reforming the Cannabis Control Commission. There are a lot of Democrats who are very unhappy with the job that Deb Goldberg has done. There are a lot of Democrats who really miss Charlie Baker at a time when they felt like there was a voice for fiscal constraint. Democrats have the same family budget that I do. At the end of the day, we're all people. We all want a functional state. We all want to be able to afford to stay here.
So the second part of that question is what's one area where you think the Treasurer's Office needs to push harder, even if it creates political friction? Is there an area?
All of them, to be honest. The one that I'm really focused on right now is the lottery. And again, whatever you think of state-sponsored gambling, before the state took over the lottery, the mob ran it and people died. So at the end of the day, I am much happier having the state run this and nobody dying than the alternative. The lottery in Massachusetts stands out. The average state, maybe $200, $300 per year per adult. The higher states might be $500 or $600 per year per adult. Massachusetts, we're outliers. $1,000 per adult per year is spent on lottery tickets. That is a huge amount of money. It is not being run well right now because the current treasurer has appointed her cronies and their relatives and friends. It is not based on, it's who you know, not what you know. So given the importance of the lottery to local aid, given the importance of the lottery to state revenues, we need to go in there and clean house. We need to make sure that we're running the best, cleanest game that we can with the lowest administrative costs, returning the highest amount of dollars that we can to cities and towns. So all of them, to be honest, but the lottery is one that really, really catches my attention, just given how significant it is in terms of what people are spending on it in Massachusetts and its importance to local aid.
Okay. What do you want voters to understand about you that may not come through in campaign messaging?
I am beholden to nobody. I am beholden to no special interests. I have a reputation for being squeaky clean. I have upset a lot of people, to be honest, of my own party in Belmont because I insisted on reforming structures. I do not believe in patronage. I do not believe in cronyism. I believe in giving the job to the most qualified person. And the reason is because that's the person who's going to deliver the best results for the taxpayers of Massachusetts. I am fearless. I have stood up and I have taken a lot of heat on various issues over the years. But I'm here for a reason. I don't need this job. I'm not a professional politician. I don't have to do this. I am doing this because I love my state, I love my children, I love my community, and I want to serve.
Is there something that I haven't asked you during our conversation here today, but that if you have a chance to address the viewers today, what would you say to them?
I would really like them to become more familiar with what happened to Shannon O'Brien. I want to talk a little bit about this because it was truly despicable. When people show us who they are, we should believe them. Deborah Goldberg showed us who she is in her treatment of Shannon O'Brien. So Shannon O'Brien is a former state treasurer. The Cannabis Control Commission, since its inception in 2017, has been a hot mess. That's a term of art, hot mess. O'Brien was brought in 22 to clean it up, and she did her job. And I've never spoken to her, but I have spoken to many people around her, and I've heard the same story from Republicans and Democrats. She's a respected public servant. She used to be the treasurer. She did her job. And because she upset the crony networks, Deb Goldberg didn't like it. So what does Deb Goldberg do? She could only get rid of O'Brien for cause. And that is something as an attorney, I followed this case closely. The treasurer was not even on my radar, but I followed the case closely as an attorney. So she manufactured a charge of racism against Shannon O'Brien. To accuse someone of being a racist is to destroy their reputation. Shannon O'Brien said, I will never work again after she did this to me. So Shannon O'Brien did what I would have done and contested it. She won at the trial level. Goldberg was not satisfied with that, appealed. Goldberg has spent $1 million of taxpayer money on this personal vendetta, this grudge lawsuit against Shannon O'Brien O'Brien won again. Not only won, the judge excoriated Goldberg for what she had done to O'Brien. To accuse someone of racism baselessly, that is libel, in my opinion. Since October, I believe, September, October, O'Brien's been back. And yet again, in talking to people who know what's going on, she's doing her job. So the state auditor issued a scathing report in August about the dysfunction of the Cannabis Control Commission. And not only was it a complete mess and chaos, some people had to pay fees, some didn't. It was arbitrary, it was capricious, it was who you knew. So what was supposed to be helping small businesses was favoring large businesses who knew how to grease the wheels, so to speak. But also, the safety testing wasn't going on. So we are offering the public a product without quality controls. O'Brien is addressing both of those. She's addressing the financial issues, the business issues, the structural issues. She's also addressing the public health issues. I want people to know that Goldberg's treatment of O'Brien is a statement of who she is. It's abhorrent.
Fun, non-political fact about you. Something fun about you that folks won't see on the campaign trail, but you want to share with the viewers.
So I have never been an athlete. 4 years ago, I decided to take up tennis.
Ooh.
And actually ended up being reasonably good at it. And met a lovely group of women who were so kind to me. I was genuinely terrible. And they nurtured me, raised me up. I feel like their tennis baby. And played a match this morning and won.
Really? The next Chrissy Everett, huh?
Oh, no. As my son, who is a multi-sport athlete, said to me last summer, Mom, I never thought I'd hear you telling sports stories.
Oh.
So it's become a really nice way to connect with my husband and kids who are all very athletic. I just am not. So it just shows you're never too old to learn new tricks. And the wonderful thing about tennis, there are courts everywhere. You just need a racket and some shoes and balls. You know, the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus Williams, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the pedigree, and they became the greatest in the world. Tennis is a fabulous sport that is open to everybody. You don't need special equipment, you don't need a lot of money, you can just go do it. Just find a nice group of people who will be as kind to you as these women were to me.
And oddly enough, the taping here at Abington Community Access and Media Incorporated, right across our front door, are tennis courts, and people love those tennis courts.
Yeah. Well, I've been fighting Belmont. We lost 10 courts when we built the new middle and high school, and I've been fighting to, unsuccessfully so far, but I'm not giving up. We need to get more courts back.
Maybe you got to start with the pickleball courts and then
We do have pickleball courts. We put those into one of our fields, and they've been a huge success. I love anything that gets people outside and talking to their neighbors. Those are all public goods. They're wonderful things to do. So
I want to thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
Before we let you leave us, if folks want to find out more about you, your campaign, how they can get involved, how can they do that?
Thank you for asking that question. They can go to my website. My website is votedionne.com. It's vote, DIONNE.com. Would really appreciate it if you would go, maybe sign up to be a volunteer, maybe donate. This really is going to be people's campaign. I'm running to be the taxpayer's treasurer. I have no special interest money. I have no industry money. But this is a winnable race. We have a 3-term incumbent who is deeply flawed, and I want to go to Beacon Hill and speak for you and your families. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see more of you along the campaign trail who stop by.
I hope so. Anytime.
Excellent. And you've been tuned in to Community Chat here on Abington Community Access and Media Incorporated. We thank you for tuning into programs like this. And until our next show, have yourself a great day.